Hello all my JavaScript friends, this is TheVirtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and this is our racing game. In our last video we took a look at the ground, the layout renderer, and the car renderer. Now let's take a look at all the other classes that helps make everything nice and pretty here. So what we're going to cover here is the start gate, or starting line, the finish line, the buttons in the upper left hand corner here, the timer, and the finish. So let's just take this one section at a time. Okay, first thing we're going to take a look at is the start line here. So I've uncommented out the start line section to get from the layout renderer what the starting line is. There can only be one starting line per layout. There can't be multiple ones. So the layout renderer will always grab me the start line itself. So that is part of the initialization routine, and that gets me all rip-roaring and ready to go. Now, why do we have that particular start line? Because the start line is responsible for starting the cars off. So let's take a look at the start line code. Let's go over here, starting line, because there's some very interesting things going on. All right, for the start line code here, it's no, a lot of this is no big deal. Blah 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 blah. That's I don't care about that. Don't care about that. But what I do care about is that not only do we have the start line, let me just go back to our screen here. Not only do we have the start line itself, which you can see, that's the yellow part. That's right there. So not only do we have the start line itself, but we've got to have a way to be able to stop the cars from moving, because once we hit the render of that, once that scene is rendering 60 times a second, we need to be able to not have the cars immediately start moving down the track. So how are we stopping the cars at this point? Because let me hit F5 here. Once I hit F5, notice that they flop down and then they just stop right in the middle of the starting line. How do we do that? Well, let's take a look at the code. What you don't see here is that when we render the start line, not only get the straight road and we color it up with that green material, but we have what's called a front gate and a start gate. And these two gates, the front gate and the the front gate and the back gate, not the front gate and start gate, the front gate and the back gate. When we have those two gates there, they're automatically positioned, one at the very end of the starting line, that would be the front gate, and one in the middle of the start line, and that would be the back gate. And all this code here allows me to be able to figure out where those particular gates are coming from. And in fact, I'll tell you right now, this is actually incorrect. This is not dependent upon the direction vector. I didn't do a very good job about that. So that's one of the things we'll need to fix. But we have the front gate and the back gate. So why do we not see them? Because we have visibility set to false. So what I'm going to do here is let's go back to our code. And it's going to refresh itself once I change it here. But I'm going to turn on the visibility of the front gate and the back gate. There we go. Now you can see the two gates. So that is what is actually stopping the cars from going. Both of those gates have a 0 mass, so you can't go through them. You're not going anywhere with those gates. So that's what's actually stopping the gates, and you don't see them because I have the visibility turn off. Now I got the visibility turn true, but the visibility normally turn off. So how do I get the car started? As you've seen in the demos I had here, I have a routine here called lower bars. And the lower bars here allows me to be able to lower the bars automatically. For example, what I have to do is basically I have to first of all I have to disable some of the physics functions to be able to. I found out I can move the mesh, but if I move the mesh, the physical body of the mesh won't move. So I have to disable that particular step. I then reposition both the front gate and the back gate to a -4, which from a Y position, which will drop them completely out of range. And then I go ahead and re-enable enable the pre-step on the physics once the scene has finished saying that the physical observables have been completed. That will automatically lower the bars. This is a method. This is an event that occurs on the scene that before the physics has arrived. I don't know what it does. I found it and hey, it works great. But this is basically how you get the physics to move, the physical body to move with the front gate and the back gate. So once those bars lower, they will basically lower below the Y position. They will basically lower the Y position, so they'll end up, way back here, way past the they'll end up way past the track there. And because those bars are no longer there, the cars will begin to move. So that's how that works. So what we'll do here is I'm going to turn, let's go back to our code. I'm going to turn the visibility back to false so that they are completely gone, because it looks ugly on the screen there. And that gets us back to where we don't have any more gates showing up on the screen. So I kind of wanted to show you that with the start line. I thought that was a pretty decent little thing. So once we get to the start line, again, all I did was just, it's still in the 60 times per second rendering loop. The finish line is another piece we're going to take a look at here. Let's go ahead and uncomment out this section. Now the finish line is something a little bit more interesting. What we've done here with the finish line, let me get this format a little bit better. So I've grabbed the finish line there, and I've set the finish line meshes on the finish line. Now this is very important because the finish line itself, and let me scroll over to the finish line. The finish line itself has a little blue bar, a little blue line across it. That blue line is a line that allows me to be able to say when a car has crossed the finish line. So I've got to be able to tell Babylon.js that when a car intersects that blue line, it'll be finished. Yes, the blue line should be a little further up. I've got some computational errors, but I thought for this one, okay, we're fine. All my projects always have, we need to revisit and do this and do that and do that. That's something we need to revisit and do a little bit later on. But that's not a big deal. So let's take a look at the finish line. The finish line code is also very simple, but the key here with the finish line code is that we do set the finish line meshes. So here is the set finish line meshes code, and this gives us the meshes. It sets the meshes to check. And then when we call the check for finish line, and this check for finish code will occur in the rendering section. You'll see that here in just a minute. This will allow me to be able to use the intersect messages function of the array that I have created. And once I've finally found that something has indeed crossed the finish line, then I compute what has crossed the finish line and whether it has crossed again. Because if it's running real slow, it may trigger 4, 5, 6 times in that 60 times a second. And so once it triggers, I'm saving it off so I will not have to, compute it again. So that way I can keep track, once it's crossed, and I don't have to, say, hey, you've crossed 6, 7, 8 times. So that's the real big thing about the finish line, is that I'm setting the finish line meshes right here to tell it, these are the meshes, in this case, the car chassis mesh, that you need to check for when they cross the finish line. And so when they actually cross the finish line, which will occurs right here. Which occurs right somewhere. There it is, which occurs right there. Then we're in really good shape. We get the finish. We get the finish lines there. So let's now get that all fixed up here. And so one of the things we're going to have to take a look at, well, actually, we're going to have to do two things here, which we can't start anything until we start the finish line. So let's go ahead, now that we've got the finish line done, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that get all of this up and running. And by that, I mean, let me refresh my screen, show it to you. But that I mean is what's in the upper left-hand corner here, the 4 dots, which controls when we're going to send everything out, the time, and the order of finish. So let's take a quick look at that. The racing lights is what controls the racers as they go forward. And that is the racing lights routine. Whoop, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, that is the racing lights method or class. And the racing lights class is very, very simple. Basically what it does is once it constructs it, it's no big deal. It gets all the different sounds it has. Then once it starts, it will start up, and it will resolve itself once it is time to go. So basically it will start the countdown, and once the countdown has finished, it's going to receive a message from the light list, which we'll show you here in just a second. And yeah, it's going to receive a message from the light list. It's going to play a different sound, and then it's going to resolve itself. So the idea is that we got the list itself. Actually, let's just go to erase. Let's just show it to you. What the heck? I don't know what I'm sitting here explaining to you without showing it to you. So we're going to need sounds. So we'll cover that here in just a second. So this is the sounds in the racing lights. So there are the sounds in the racing lights. They're now ready to go. There's nothing inside the initialization thing to do anymore. And then all we have to do now in the render, so once we call the render, this is where the racing lights comes in, is that what we're going to do is we're going to, let me uncomment that out, we're going to start the racing lights with the sounds that we have. Then we're going to lower the bars, and I've already showed you that, and then we're going to start the race. Now I'm going to comment that out right there, because I don't want to start the race at this particular point in time. And the sounds, we got the sounds, good. Okay, so once we go to the racing lights themselves, once we go to the start, we get all the different LIs, because it happens to be inside of an LI in my HTML. Our current light is -3. We happen to know our current light is based upon the index. Now, why are we saying -3 here instead of saying, 0? Because the first index is 0 for the LIs. Well, that is because I've got an interval down here of 1 second. And I do the countdown every 1 second. And all the countdown does here is that if the current light is greater than or equal to 0, I remove the off, and I play the first beep type countdown. The reason I started at -3 is that gives me basically a 3-second interval for the cars to settle down. If you remember, if you took a look at the videos, once the cars appear on the screen, they kind of fall to the track, and then they hit the two bars, the two gates, and they have to kind of settle. So the 3 seconds here gives them the ability to settle. Once they settle, once the current light gets ++, once we hit the 5th current light, we clear out the interval because we don't need it anymore, and then we just dispatch the go event. And this is where we listen to the go event. And once we listen to the go event, we play that other sound, whoop, whatever that other sound is, and then we listen for it to end. And once it ends, we start the car racing sound. That's the that you hear and all that kind of fun stuff. And we play it off, and then we resolve it. Once we resolve it, go back over to race. Once it gets resolved, then we lower the bars, and off we go. Now, once we lower the bars, remember the render is sitting there flipping around doing its thing. Once the render sits there and finally finds out that, hey, there's no more bars there, these cars can move, the cars will start moving. So if I have commented out everything correctly here, everything should start moving once I save it. So let's save it and let's go back. Yep, there we go. And the car should start off. And then they finish off and hit the box there. And I've got about a 4-second delay. But notice the sound is still going on. And the reason the sound is still going on is that because we haven't finished up the finish line yet. The finish line has not been completed, and so we don't know that everything has been finished. So let's do that next. In fact, what I'll do first of all is I'm going to turn off the sound so I can listen to myself. Let's go to highlight. Let's go back into our screen here. We did the render. And so now we need to be able to, we've got our finish line all ready to go. So this is where we implement the finish line. So we'll just comment out that completely. So we're not going to do the race time yet. The car chassis, this is what we call the finish line check for finish. This is where it checks to make sure something is finished. If I return a car chassis, that means that car chassis has finished. I get the car chassis, I add it to our race results. We haven't done race results yet, so we'll comment that out. Order of finish push. We've done that. We haven't done, or then we push our order of finish, which I'll use later on. We implement the place. Once place is greater than 4, that means all the cars have now passed the finish line. That we stop the timer. We haven't implemented timer yet, so we'll comment that out. And then we fade out the sound by 4,000 milliseconds. And that pretty much will finish up the finish line. So now we're to the point where the cars will start. They will roll down the thing. We'll hear the sounds. Once they cross the finish line, they will completely finish up. Now we won't know anything here because we haven't done the finish time or the race time that we've done here shortly. So once we save that off and we go to our screen, I'll turn the sound back on so we can all enjoy that sound. There we go. Alrighty, there's the sound. There they go. One, two, three, 4. And now we should hear the sound fade out after about 4 seconds. And yes, indeedy, it has faded out after about 4 seconds. Oh, good. So we got that much. So what's left on this one? Well, what's left is we got to get the time and the order of finish. So let's go over to our screen and take a look at that. And that's very simple. We scroll back up to the very top here. Race time and race results. Let's do both of those at the same time here. Race time is a class that controls, let's flip back over to the screen here. Race time controls the timing that you see right here. Oh, come on. I'm going to turn the sound back off. There we go. Race time controls the timing that you see right here, and the finish controls that order of finish that will appear once it has happened. Once it has happened here. So we notice that we did have a time there that showed up on the screen, but it never started up because I haven't done anything with it. I've just created the race time and the race results. So let's go into our render. And earlier, remember we said that once the start has finished up, since it's a promise, we lower the bars and now we start the time. So when we do the race time, we just do the race time start. Let's take a quick look at that. And this is about as extraordinarily simple as you can possibly get. All we do is start the time. This is where we show the time. This is where we stop the time. This is how we format the time. You can't get simpler than that. I mean, there's really not much to it past that point. So that's where we start the time. And once every 60 seconds, we need to be able to show the time. So we're also going to uncomment this out. That will show the time that once every 60 frames per second. That will show the current time. And we need to stop it once the final car has crossed the finish line. So now we stop the race once the final car has it's gone past the finish line. So that should get us into, that should now do the timing correctly. So let's see if that will do the timing correctly. And I'm going to keep the sound off. We'll turn it on here in just a second. So the key here is we're looking at the time. Yep, there goes the time. And we should see the time stop once all 4 cars have crossed the finish line. There is one slight bug that if cars are just perfectly crossing the finish line, we won't get all 4 of them crossed. Yep, all 4 of them crossed, and it stopped at 12.161 seconds. So we now know that the time works. Now, how about the race results? Let's take a quick look at that. The race results is also brain dead simple. Basically, we clear out the body. This is a table that we're using, HTML table. We clear out the body, and we just add that car in. We add what car it had, what place it had, what time it has, and we just blah, 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 blah. Just simple HTML at that particular point in time. That's it. Not really much to it. So, whoops. So let's go back over to race, and let's now initialize everything there. We've already initialized we've already created the race results there. So nothing to do inside there. All right, so the race results don't come in until a car has finished, and we know a car is finished once it's gotten right here. So let's uncomment out that. That will add the row that we need for the race results. And that should be it. Let's go to our screen, turn the volume back on. Everything should work fine now. All right, there we go. Perfect. My little racer, fast Ferrari, red rocket, crushing Camaro. As you can see, they all came in perfectly fine. So we got the time, and we got the name of the racer itself. So the last thing I want to show on this particular video is the sounds real quick. And that's going to be something very, very simple. Let's go to our sounds. And basically the sound here is I've got 3 different waves and a beep, what they call a beep countdown, beep starting, and sound racing. And I've put things inside audio, context, and gain nodes, and I'll explain that for a second. If you remember from a couple of videos ago when I was demoing this thing, the sound suddenly quit. That's because I had a fader instance, or I was using a particular, I was going real fancy using context and gain nodes and all that kind of stuff to create the fading, but I found that for some reason it did it one time and then it quit doing it forever until I completely wiped out my tab and created a whole new tab. So I built my own fading routine, but that's no big deal. So the idea here is I create the audio, which is simply a new audio. I do, if it's a car racing, I do put it on a loop just in case, it will just loop over and over and over and over again. And then to play the audio, we just play it. The beeps were a little louder than the car racing, so I did set the volume of the beeps down to 0.6 just to get them to sound a little bit much with the racing. We can stop them all, but the big thing here is the fade out at the very end. Once the system has, once the race is finished, I just want the race car thing is on endless loop, so it'll just keep on going and going. I want to be able to eventually pause it out. So I've got a interval, in my case 4,000 milliseconds, default's 2,000, but I got an interval here that that I decrease the volume a little bit at a time. And once the volume gets below a certain section, I pause it, which is the way to stop it, and then I clear out the interval. I don't do any more. So basically that stops the video from playing. And all that occurs right here. You can tell originally I had an all stop, which just immediately stopped the sound. That just sounded terrible. But now I've got a little fade out that occurs on there. So that's now that is pretty much it. There is nothing else to show you on the graphics, except for the car, which we'll show you on our next video here. So let's all enjoy it one more time. And there we go. Let's get all the way down here. Here they come. Ah! Oh, blue wins this time. Red Rocket is the winner. My little racer is second, fast Ferrari third, and crushing Camaro is fourth. And that will end this particular video. Our next video is we're going to take a look at the car itself and spend the entire video on the car. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel to view more videos. Click on the like button on this video and visit us at TheVirtuoid.com. Also, support us on Patreon, where you can get access to member-only videos. Links are down below. Again, thank you very much for watching, and keep on coding.